This is Enchantment Wandering, where we find magic in the everyday. Autumn is the season that makes slowing down feel natural. Time to take in the colors, breathe in the crisp air, and gather what the season gives. Today we're going apple picking and turning the harvest into 6 cozy fall recipes, all inspired by the season's simple enchantment. Even though we've been waiting for fall weather, it's only just now starting to feel like it. When I filmed this in September, it was almost 90 degrees. All sun, no sweaters. We brought a little picnic, stopped by Panera, and ended up eating in the car to beat the heat. I poured our homemade apple lemonade, inspired by a Japanese drink my mom loves. I'll show you our take later in the video. I enjoyed a basil BLT. After we ate, we headed into the orchard. We grabbed picking bags and checked the prices. $4.49 a pound, about 2 to 3 medium apples. This orchard grows so many varieties: Zestar, First Kiss, Sweet Tango, Honey Crisp, Honey Gold, Chestnut Crabapple, Ginger Gold, Sweet 16, Cortland, Snow Sweet, and more. If some names are unfamiliar, many are Minnesota-bred cultivars from the University of Minnesota.
See if it's ready by tasting it.
Yeah. Some of these look ripe, but I think the one you had really wasn't ripe.
Since it was mid-September, some of the trees were still ripening. Once we were in the rows, it was hard to remember which varieties were actually ready, so we had to taste them.
It's okay.
It's still a little tart. No, they are. Well, the website said they are. We didn't try this one yet, right? Oh, it's so green.
One of the joys of visiting an orchard is tasting across varieties and noticing how each apple has its own personality. Crisp versus tender, tart versus sweet, floral versus spicy. In stores, you usually only see certain varieties, and around here, it's mostly Honey Crisp and Zestar. At the orchard, you can try the niche varieties and really taste the range. I'm curious, what varieties do you usually find where you live? Overall, we liked the apples with that tangy sweet balance, the ones that tasted most distinctly apple to us. But of course, everyone has their own tastes.
I like the Honey Crisp bit better.
Really? This one's actually pretty decent.
Oh, really? You like this one better? That's interesting. We all have different apple taste.
Yeah, oh man, over here there's a bunch of really good.
Well, I have to say, the Honey Crisp tastes kind of sweet and tart. This tastes like an apple. Has more of an apple flavor. Oh, this is a bit sweeter. Oh, it's more sweet, yeah.
The skin's kind of mushy.
Yeah, it is kind of soft.
With our tasting done, it was time to get picking. We got a wide assortment of apples, but there were a few standouts. We loved the chestnut crabapple. Tiny, very sweet, with a light nutty note. Sometimes crabapples get a bad rap, but often I've found them to be some of my favorite varieties. Sweet 16 was another favorite, which is supposed to have notes of citrus and vanilla. And I was excited to try Ginger Gold, which I hadn't had before. It was discovered in 1969 by Ginger Harvey in Virginia, sweet with a hint of spice, so I really wanted to taste it. It was on the softer side, but had a sweet honey and almost ginger flavor. To be honest, we felt a little underprepared for picking apples. Some people had long picking poles to reach the high branches. It would have also been nice to have a small knife for quick tastings. We should have also gotten more bags and maybe even had a marker to keep varieties separate. By the time we got home, we honestly didn't know which was which.
It says they're all tiny.
On the way out, we spotted cherries on a Honey Crisp trunk. I'm thinking it was grafted on, but it really threw us for a loop.
But look, because those are big down there. These are cherries? Are you sure? They're hard.
What's wrong with cherry tree in the middle of the apple orchard?
It's a Rainier cherry. It's really tart. It's an unripe cherry.
Okay.
Before we weighed our haul, we wandered through the farm store and grabbed some of the orchard's own sparkling apple cider. All told, we spent $54 for about 8 pounds of apples plus the cider. Apple picking isn't the cheapest way to buy fruit. You're really paying for the experience. It's a sweet way to spend an afternoon, reconnect with nature, and appreciate where your food comes from. All of that got me thinking about the many ways to use apples and savor their flavors. So I've got 6 recipes inspired by what we picked. When we got home, my brother had been apple picking at a different orchard and showed up with goodies, more apples, including River Belle and Kinder Crisp, plus donuts and apple butter. We had quite the selection and had totally forgotten which apples were which. So we started with a little taste test, with some cheese on the side. That pairing actually inspired our first recipe: goat cheese and cider swirl ice cream with fresh apple puree. One of the first things we did was juice a batch of apples for fresh cider. We're going to use this for our cider swirl. For the swirl, I brought the apple cider to a boil, then simmered until it had reduced to 1/2 cup. Then I added cream, milk, sugar, corn syrup, and a pinch of salt. The cider is slightly acidic, so don't be alarmed if it looks like the milk curdles. It will come back together when you mix it. If you want, you can add an optional teaspoon of milk powder for added creaminess. I used an immersion blender to mix the powder in to ensure everything was smooth. I let that cool and made the goat cheese ice cream next. Combine milk, cream, sugar, corn syrup, salt, and milk powder. Then heat until the sugar is dissolved. Remove from the heat and add the cream, cheese, and goat cheese, but to ensure there weren't any lumps, I used an immersion blender. Chill both the ice cream bases in the fridge overnight. In my case, I have a Ninja Creamy, so I put them in the container that comes with the machine and froze overnight. The next day, churn or blend both the goat cheese ice cream and the cider ice cream, according to your ice cream maker's instructions. While your ice cream is churning, finely chop 1 apple. I chose 2 smaller chestnut apples for this. I used an immersion blender to puree the apples as much as possible, but having some small chunks adds to the texture. We just don't want them to be too big, otherwise it might be difficult to eat when frozen. Pour the goat cheese ice cream into a container. To the cider ice cream, mix in the apple puree. The cider ice cream is a looser texture, so it's easy to pour onto the goat cheese ice cream. You can gently mix the two together, but don't mix too much. Let it hard freeze for at least 4 hours before enjoying. I'd been chasing an apple ice cream that tastes like pure apple, not stewed pie filling, and the charcuterie vibes from this ice cream nailed it. Tangy goat cheese, bright apple, and a cidery ribbon. I don't want to steal the thunder from the other recipes, but this might be up there for favorites. I'm already planning a remake next fall. My family gave it a full thumbs up, and while goat cheese ice cream raises eyebrows, it turns out to be a surprisingly good ice cream base. Next up is the apple lemonade I teased at the beginning. It was inspired by a packaged Japanese apple lemonade my mom had. You just added water, so we wanted to recreate it. To mimic the original, I'm using freeze-dried Fuji apples, but I've also included a fresh apple version since not everyone has freeze-dried fruit on hand. I'm using Fuji because of the Japanese inspo, but any apple will work. I blended my freeze-dried apple into a fine powder, then poured the powder into a pitcher and added the sugar and a pinch of salt. If you have fresh apples, core and roughly chop the Fuji apples. No need to peel. Blend with 2/3 cup of cold water until very smooth. Strain through a nut bag or fine mesh sieve to extract pure apple juice. Pour that juice into a pitcher with the sugar and a pinch of salt. Now add the lemon juice and stir until the sugar is dissolved. Add the remaining water. Serve over ice. For a fizzy version, add sparkling water to the lemonade. The apple takes the edge off the lemon and makes a refreshing drink that will have you coming back for more. Next up is a simple apple filling you can use for pies, or in my case, Danish. I made a small batch with just one Honeycrisp, chopped it, then cooked it down with butter, sugar, cinnamon, and a touch of lemon. A little cornstarch helps the syrup to thicken. Once cooled, it's ready to spoon over pastry, or a cream cheese filling, before baking until golden and bubbling. I'm not going to cover the Danish dough here. This was an experimental recipe, and laminated dough can be pretty labor-intensive. Many people use puff pastry instead. If you're into lamination and want a deeper dive, I've got a croissant video you can check out. These turned out delicious, a cozy little way to enjoy fall. Does anyone remember the caramel apple blizzard from Dairy Queen in the early 2000s? They haven't brought it back, but the food memory lives on. I've been chasing a homemade version for years, but this year is the closest I've come, though I still see room to improve. I was hoping for a tart green apple at the orchard, but no luck. So this batch is a little cheat, a few drops of green apple candy flavoring in the base. For the ice cream, whisk together cream, milk, sugar. Heat until the sugar is dissolved. Add 1 to 2 drops of green apple flavoring, and if you'd like, some green food coloring. I also added vanilla, but it competed with the apple too much, so I'd say skip it. Chill overnight. For the caramel, cook sugar and corn syrup over medium heat, stirring until melted. When it turns amber, pull it off the heat and stir in butter. Slowly whisk in cream until smooth. If it seizes and you get a sugar clump, you can return it to the heat to melt it down. Just know that it can push the caramel to overcook, so it sets firmer in the ice cream. That happened to me. It was still tasty, just less gooey. And cool to room temperature. Refrigerate overnight. Churn the base according to your machine. I used a Ninja Creamy. Swirl the caramel into the finished ice cream. If your caramel is a touch overcooked, drizzle it on top. Freeze at least 4 hours before scooping. It's a passable and very enjoyable dupe, but I want to push it further. Next time, I'm trying a green apple syrup made from real apples. If you're into a side-by-side test, fresh green apples versus flavoring, let me know in the comments or like this video so I know to film it next year. Next up, a fall classic, apple cider donuts. Even though they're everywhere, this was actually my first time having them. My dad spotted a New York Times recipe and now we're obsessed. I used their base and made a few tweaks to amplify the flavor. This recipe used more of the cider we made. To intensify the apple flavor, I reduced 1 cup of cider to 1/4 cup, different from the Times version. Bring the cider to a boil, then simmer until reduced. Let it cool while you prep the dough. In a bowl, cream 10 tablespoons of butter with the sugar until fluffy. Beat in 2 eggs, 1 at a time, then add the vanilla. In a separate bowl, whisk the dry ingredients. I adjusted the spice blend, adding clove, ginger, and allspice instead of the nutmeg recommended by the Times. If you want the original flavor profile, just add 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. With the mixer on low, slowly add the dry ingredients to the butter until just combined. Pour in the reduced cider and mix briefly to incorporate. I used a mini donut maker, which took about 3 to 4 minutes per batch, but if you don't have one, preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, butter a donut pan, and bake for 12 to 15 minutes, rotating halfway through baking. While they cook, melt the remaining butter and stir 1/2 cup of sugar with cinnamon. When the donuts are done, brush with butter and toss in the cinnamon sugar. It's optional. The donuts are great plain, but the sugar makes them feel extra special. This was another one of my favorites this season. With all the apples we used, I ended up with a mountain of peels and cores. In the spirit of no waste and saving a few bucks, I turned them into apple scrap vinegar. Pack a clean jar about 3/4 full with apple peels and cores. Add enough water to cover the apples, then add 1 tablespoon of sugar per 1 cup of water added. You can also add a splash of raw apple cider vinegar to jumpstart the fermentation, but that's optional. Cover the jar with a breathable material, like a coffee filter or fabric covers. Let it sit at room temperature. For the first week, stir once a day, or give it a good swirl. You're looking for small bubbles, a fruity, yeasty smell, and cloudy liquid. Around day 7 to 10, when the bubbles slow and the scraps look spent, strain out the solids. Pour the liquid into a clean jar, cover it again with cloth, and keep going. Now we're in the vinegar phase. For the next 2 to 3 weeks, stir or swirl 2 to 3 times a week to give it a little air. A vinegar mother might form on top. That's normal. Keep tasting weekly. You're aiming for bright, clean acidity around 3 to 4 weeks total, and up to 6 weeks if you want it sharper. When it tastes like vinegar with no sweetness left, bottle it. You can keep the mother in or strain it out. Store at room temperature to keep maturing, or in the fridge to slow it down. A quick note, a thin matte white film is usually calm yeast, which is harmless. Just stir it in or skim it. If you see fuzzy colored mold, toss it and start over. Keep everything clean, keep the scraps under the liquid, and avoid metal lids touching the vinegar. Mine's still in the process, but it looks good and bubbly when I checked it last. If you made it this far, consider subscribing for more cozy food content. And if you're craving more fall cookspiration, check out these videos next. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, enchantment awaits. Life is just about finding it.